Yep, here we go. We're on.
Hey.
Hi, how are you? Michael Port.
Amy Mead.
And we're going to do this the official way. Since this is the first of 2 sessions that we're going to hold for you. You ready? We're going to clap in. Heroic public speaking, how to set the world on fire. All right, so we're ready. We're going to do 2 sessions. This is going to be all content. Of course, we are doing these sessions because we want you to come and join the Heroic Public Speaking Total Immersion Program. We hope you do, and we hope that these live streams inspire you to join us for that. So we'll tell you the website, and then we'll teach to you for the entire time. Then we'll tell you the website again. In our next session, we'll talk more about the program itself and your next steps. Of course, the card is open today, so if you know you're ready, you just sign up. You don't have to wait until the next session. So it's heroicpublicspeaking.com/special.
I love that.
Because you are special.
They are special.
They are special too. heroicpublicspeaking.com/special. Again, I'm Michael Port. This is Amy Mead. We are the founders of Heroic Public Speaking. Let's start off with content because that's what we promised. How to create content. This has always been my secret. Now it is our secret, and we share it with you. The experts are experts in part because they know what they're doing, but also because they know how to organize their information and then, of course, present that information.
And so often that's the difference. Experts may know more, yes, that is true, but it is in the organization of it. And as Michael said, the performance, the presentation of that information that you see the real difference.
So when we start to create content, we always start with a big idea. Now, a big idea doesn't mean a different idea. It's not something that is so unique that nobody's ever thought about it before necessarily. It could be a similar idea. You know, I do a keynote called the Think Big Revolution. Thinking big is not exactly a new idea, but what you bring to it is exciting for the people that you're meant to serve. So you start with a big idea, and a big idea leads to a promise. So every speech you give, every presentation you give delivers on a promise. So for example, if you work with us, you will become a better public speaker. It's 100% guaranteed. There is no doubt that we can do that for you. So there's always a promise inherent in every single presentation you do. So first the big idea, then the promise. Now, we want to make sure we understand what the world looks like to the people in the room, and that we know what the world looks like for them.
It's our entry point with them. If we can demonstrate very early in the presentation that we understand their worldview, we understand what they struggle with, we understand the way they see things, then we can take it to the next step, which is to say, here's what the world could look like. We understand what the world looks like for you, and here's what the world could look like if you adopt the worldview or the change in what they say or do or think that we present or that you present.
So for example, the world may look like this to you as it relates to public speaking. You may get nervous. You may have something to say but are not sure how to say it. You may be excited to get on stage but not exactly sure what to do when you're there other than kind of wander around a little bit and talk.
You may not know what to do with your hands.
Which, of course, is one of the things that people ask nonstop, and we'll address that in a bit. Your voice may get hoarse. We're going to address that too.
You may find that your mouth gets dry and you don't know what to do about that.
We're going to address that also. So there's a lot of things that we know about you. So we design all of our offerings around that. And so the promise is easy to deliver because everything that we teach is designed to deliver on that promise. Now, once you know the big idea and the promise, then you choose a framework for your content, some container to put it in. And there are a couple different frameworks that we teach. The most straightforward, most basic is the numerical framework. This is a framework you see in most self and business help books and speeches. And we'll use books as examples here because most of us have read the same books, but we all haven't seen the same speeches. So what's a book that is a numerical framework? Think about it. What's a book that you have read recently or in the past that is a numerical framework? One of them may be 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. This is one of the most popular business books or self-improvement books in the world. And it is a very simple title. He doesn't have to teach all 7 of those habits. He can teach them in any order that he wants. And it's a really easy way to organize the information and, of course, help the audience consume the information.
Now, another one of these frameworks is the modular framework, which you can break down. It's beautiful if you're expanding your speech into either, let's say, a workshop or condensing it down from 60-minute into a 20-minute. Thank you.
Yeah.
Because you can take one of those modules and expand it for that longer framework and go into it in great detail. You could reduce it down and teach it very simply. Now, the modular framework does not have to. It very often has there are sometimes module 1, module 2, module 3, module 4, but any of the modules could be taught on their own as well.
Yeah, and then often you need to organize information inside each module. So you can use a numerical framework inside of that. You can also use a sequential or chronological framework inside those modules. So first you do this, then you do this, then you do this, and then you do this. So you see how you can combine these frameworks, or they can stand on their own. Just like a sequential framework can stand on its own as well, because you have 5 steps to solve a particular problem. So there are numerical frameworks, there are sequential frameworks, there are modular frameworks, those are 3. And then there are problem solution frameworks. You can put those inside of modules also, or parts. Here's a problem. Here's a solution to the problem. Here's another problem. Here's another solution to the problem. And here's another problem. And here's another solution to the problem.
And you can keep going and going and going.
And go on. But you see, what you're doing when you're giving speeches is solving problems. That's what you're doing. And you're trying to address the problems that the people in the audience have. So it's an excellent way for you to organize your thinking around your content. And then, of course, help the audience consume it. This is very important. So an example, we gave you the first one, numerical framework is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. An example of a chronological framework might be Your Pregnancy Week by Week by Glade Curtis. You don't really want to read the last few weeks when you're in the first few weeks. I've never had a baby, but that would cause anxiety, create anxiety for me. I don't know about for you. You've had a few children?
I have.
Yeah. I mean, I have.
Week by week is good.
Yeah, week by week is good. So take Amy's word for it, guys. Then a modular framework, Book Yourself Solid. My first book is a modular framework, and it also has a sequential framework inside each module. So you start with the foundation, you work through building block 1, 2, 3, 4, then you go into module 2, and you work through building block, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we have a numerical, sequential, modular, problem solution, and then we'll give you another one more. We'll give you compare and contrast. So you have apples over here and you have apples over here. Well, what's the difference between a Brayburn and a Red Delicious?
We know that here. We spend a lot of time eating apples here.
We have a lot of apple discussion. It's completely. So the point is yes?
You could think of an example like Good to Great.
Yes, by Jim Collins. It's one of the most popular business books out there, up there with Stephen's book. And he takes 10 companies that are good and 10 companies that are great, and he compares them. And he says, well, these are good because of X, Y, and Z. Well, these are great because of X, Y, and Z, and also these additional ingredients. So think about your content and what framework it would fit into the best. So that's always been our secret weapon for producing creative content. Now, there's another structure that is essential in your storytelling ability, and it's the 3-act structure. And this is Aristotle's 3-act structure. We didn't make this up. Aristotle. In most plays, most films, even many of the TV shows you watch are created in a 3-act structure. When you tell a story, that story needs to be told with 3 acts.
So the first act is the given circumstances. It's the setup. It's all of the information that you need to know for the story to make sense. It's everything you need to share so that the groundwork is there.
Then because here's the thing, if you don't give people all the exposition that they need, all the given circumstances, the time, setting, place, if you don't give them that information and you go right into the conflict, the meat of the story, sometimes they have trouble following it. They're not exactly sure what's going on in the story. So that given circumstance, the exposition, the time, setting, and place are very, very important.
And who the characters are, who the people are, what their relationships are to each other.
That's exactly right. And then the conflict.
Yeah.
Something occurs that creates conflict. And that's what's exciting. That's what you want to watch. The more tension, the better. So when you're telling your stories, that's what people want to see. They want to get involved in that tension. And the more tension, the better. I don't mean tension like you tell the story like this, but tension in all of the dramatic details of the story.
It's where the drama is, in the conflict. And very often that act 2, the conflict in this 3-act structure, is the largest and most substantial part of the story. You'll see conflict after conflict after conflict until
the resolution.
Part 3, act 3.
It's it's a coming to terms with an idea. It may be the punchline to a joke. It may be a sad ending, and it may be a happy ending. Hollywood, usually they're happy, but not every story ends on a positive note. You may turn that negative resolution in the story, something that was very difficult, into a positive, and that may be why you're telling the story. But just because something happened to you doesn't mean that you can tell it in front of an audience easily.
And that's one of the traps. So often, because we've experienced something, we think, oh, I can tell that story. I lived it. But what we are encouraging is that you don't just speak. Well, you can all speak, but that you perform. And in order to perform, that requires that you rehearse. And so when you are working on your content creation, you'll go through a stage where you work on it at a table or at your computer and you're writing. But part of what we teach is how to then actually rehearse that content on your feet. And these 3 parts need to be fleshed out for that story to feel whole, regardless of the fact that you lived it already.
When we work with our students, we'll work for hours and hours and hours on just one story. And that story may be a 3-minute story. But the importance of that story it compels us to work on it. So remember, when you're going to give a speech, just because you lived through something doesn't mean that you are ready to tell it in front of an audience. Now let's talk about filler words.
What?
And there's filler words and there are weak words.
Yeah.
I mean, weak words are also filler words when we say basically this, sort of this.
Kinda.
We want to get rid of all those weak words because, for example, if you're trying to pitch a new idea to somebody, pitch a product to somebody, and they say, what is it? You say, well, it's basically a magazine, but kind of not really a magazine. Nobody's giving you money to produce that magazine. Nobody's going to be buying that magazine. So you want to always be able to articulate exactly what your idea is without any of those kinds of weak words. Now there are the filler sounds. And we do them. Most people do them to a certain degree. But I'm just going to put my hand out here and watch what happens to me when I use the word up. So I was walking down the street, and as I was walking down the street, and it gets worse. When we're at home, she's in front of the camera. At home, she just beats on me. So that's one way to avoid, filler, just have someone hit you. She's being very nice in front of the camera. Trust me. So that's one thing to do. But here is another idea. And this I actually got from one of our students, Jordan Harbinger, who is the co-founder and the host of Art of Charm, which gets 1.3 million downloads a month. That's 1.3 million. And so he worked hard on trying to rid himself of this habit. And what he tells other people to do as well is record yourself. Next time you're on a conversation on Skype, hit the record button about 20 minutes, and then listen back to it and see how many times you say or some sort of filler word. And then if you can just edit them all out and see how much shorter it would actually be if you didn't use any of those filler words, and how much better it would sound.
Yes. And that's the whole point. We want you to be captivating and compelling. You're speaking for a reason, whether you are delivering keynotes or sales presentations or quarterly reports, or you're talking to your children or a PTA meeting. We all want to be compelling and captivating and be able to communicate clearly and well. If
I don't hit her. Just let's be clear about that. She can do whatever she wants at home or anywhere. That's just the way it works around here. So if you want something from me, go to her and she can get anything that you want from me. In any event, moving on.
We're eliminating the ums.
So kind of all right. So then you can continue to record and watch yourself and listen to see if you reduce the number of times you say The other thing is this. When you're in front of an audience, sometimes you feel that you need to talk a lot because you're the only one up there. But it's perfectly okay to take time. Now, that's different than speaking slowly. Speaking quickly is fine. Nothing wrong with speaking quickly. If a speaking coach tells you to slow down, what they might mean is pause. Because if I started slowing down and I talked like this throughout the whole presentation, Amy would fall asleep, and then you would leave. But of course,
that's painful.
That's painful. I wouldn't talk like that. I have energy. I talk quickly. I'm from New York, and that's perfectly fine as long as I pause.
The pauses give the audience time to digest, because you can give a lot of information very quickly, but it's in the pause that we actually absorb it. So talk as quickly as you like, as long as we can understand what you're saying, but then give the pause so that it can land. It's the impact moment.
And one of the reasons that you use these filler words is because you may not be comfortable with the silence. Comfortable with the pause. Standing on stage or in front of a camera and just being. Just looking in the eyes of every person in the room and knowing that you own that room. And if you feel uncomfortable, then you won't feel like you own the room. You probably won't own the room. And you may start using a lot of filler words like, so the next thing I was going to talk about is...
Do you see how painful this is? It's so painful when all these weekend filler words are thrown in. But if you can say what you need to say and allow it to land for the audience and give space, you become so much more powerful on stage.
And that's a beautiful feeling.
It also feels naked. And that's one of the reasons we use a lot of weak and filler words. His eyebrow just went up as soon as I said the word naked. Here's the thing. As a performer, you are naked on stage. You are. So often we hear this teaching, oh, you're nervous on stage. Well, just imagine that the audience is in their underwear. And we've never heard a worse instruction. Because if I imagine you all out
Although
there,
it depends on who's in the audience.
But even you beautiful people, if I imagine you all on the other end of your screens in your underwear, I get very uncomfortable here, and it all starts to feel a little weird, right?
And also, you have an objective. You are there to produce a result, to make the audience feel something, think something, do something. And if you're thinking about them in their underwear, you're not thinking about what you're there to do. So one of the things that I want you to consider, are you ready? Is that you will reduce your anxiety if you know what you're doing.
Yes.
So people want tricks for how do I reduce my anxiety? How do I make sure that I'm not nervous? Well, look, you're going to be nervous from time to time. And you might even be nervous all the time. In fact, I am nervous before a speech.
Mm-hmm.
If there's 5,000 people in the audience, you know, I might have some butterflies, no matter how many times I've done it. And I think it's good. If I stop having butterflies, I think it means that maybe I don't care anymore. Because I care so much about the job that I want to do a great job. So before we do this, we might be a little bit, you know, our blood pressures are like a little bit higher. We get a little nervous too. But it's what you do with those nerves. Can you handle those nerves? Can you be nervous and your hand is perfectly even? It doesn't shake. Can you make sure that, can you still have a full voice when you get nervous? Or as you start to feel like you can't, like you're getting really dry, so you can't get all the words out. And that happens. You see someone on stage and then start like licking their mouth a lot. Now, there are certain things that you can do, like stay well hydrated. Of course, you can avoid citrus, you can avoid dairy. There are certainly some technical or practical things you can do. But ultimately, reducing nerves comes from being prepared, not just well rehearsed, but also well skilled, that you have a craft. And the reason that we are good at this is because we have a craft. We spent 3 years at the graduate, well, I spent 3 years at the graduate acting program at NYU, and Amy spent 3 years at the master's program, the graduate program at the Yale School of Drama. We were there at the same time, interestingly enough.
Didn't know each other.
Then we had the same agent when we were professional actors afterwards. Didn't know each other. We had to move out to the boonies to meet. It's completely bizarre. But I think, you know, the ultimate love story. Anyhow, so the point is we want you to feel comfortable, and the way that you reduce these problems that you run into, like, you know, voice cracking or mouth drying up or the cough that you can't get rid of, is to be so comfortable because you have the skill, even if you're nervous, that you know what you're doing when you walk on the stage. You know exactly where you're going first, what you're saying first, where you're going next, why you're going over there next, what you're saying next. You have it all designed. The story, you don't have to think about, they come to you naturally, but the audience thinks it's the first time you ever told it. It comes in the moment.
And you're focused on what you want to achieve, on how you want to make them feel. This is what performers and actors know and do all of the time, is focus on what's the effect I want to have? How do I want to make the audience feel? Or what do I want them to do? Or what do I want them to think? Now, you don't have to be an actor to do this work, but certainly the skills of performance are what will transform your public speaking from speaking, any kind of staid,
talking
behind a podium, thank you, right? Into a real performance. And that's where we want to encourage you to go, is to perform.
So what if you blank? Can't remember what you're going to say next. Thank you. You see how I was looking down? I lost you, right? You're like, what's he doing? But let's say I forgot what I was going to say, but I stayed right here with you. And I'm looking at you, not in a weird, like, you know, psycho way, but, you know, you're staying with the audience, you're looking at the audience, and while you're looking at the audience, you feel so comfortable and so confident that your thoughts are going to come back to you that you can look at them comfortably. They think you're actually in this great moment together. Meanwhile, you're going, oh, what's I going to say? What is going to say? What's next? I can't remember. Oh, yeah, bang, and you go. But what most people do is
they disconnect.
And then they come up with the next idea, and then they finish that idea, and they go. And then they come up with, now, obviously, we are sitting here. We can't walk back and forth as if we're on stage. But what happens when you're on stage is you're usually wandering over here. Then you finish what you're going to say. So you look down, you turn around, you come up with the idea, then you turn this way, and you wander over here. Then you finish your idea, then you look down, and you turn around.
Does this look familiar?
It goes back and forth and back and forth. So if you're not sure if you do this or not, you can look back at any video that, you know, has been filmed of you speaking, but you can also just go on YouTube and just look at speakers, look at how they do. Do they look like they know where they're going on stage and why they're going there? Does it look intentional? Does it look like they're in their bodies? Or does it look like they're kind of wandering around? And some of the professional speakers do this too. They've just developed very good content, and they've developed a big platform so they can get booked to speak because their platform is so big. But if you don't have a huge platform, you need to be the best in class.
That's right.
Now, the speakers who make the most money in the industry, of course, are best in class and have fantastic content. So the two things together are, you're unstoppable when you have those two things together. But if you don't have a big platform now, what you can work on very quickly as you're building your platform is getting better as a speaker, so that when you are on stage, you steal the show. People are looking at you going, wow, there's something different here. This is a performance. I gave a speech, well, I gave a speech on Monday night, and one of the women afterwards, she's like, I was so focused on you, and I was trying to figure out why. Like, why couldn't I look away? I was like, what, you mean like a car wreck? You can't look away? She said, no, it wasn't that. She said, I realized you're so in your body, the way you move on stage. You'd move this way, and I'd move in the chair that way. You'd move this way, and I'd go, yes. You'd step back, and I'd sit back. And I see the audience do that when I'm speaking. I see them moving forward and back and side to side. It's almost like we become a living organism in the room together. We're not disconnected, we're connected. Now, that doesn't mean that every single person is going to love everything that I do, or even not everybody's going to love my style. But what we do with you is help you develop your own style. I don't want to teach anyone to present or perform like I do. Amy doesn't want to either. Our goal is to change this industry, is to move us from being speakers to performers, and honest performers. But we don't want anyone to look like we train them. We just want people to watch them and go, oh my God, they're fantastic. Because each one of you is an individual. You are an individual. You are different. You are special. You have your own quirks, your own talents, and we can exploit those. We can leverage those. We can amplify those so that nobody is like you. Mm-hmm. You're unique, and your craft is solid. Your skills are masterful, but you're not doing what we are doing. You're doing what you would do based on what we're teaching you, skill, technique.
And we combine that skill and technique with authenticity. So one of the things you do as a performer is take certain aspects of your personality and exploit them, as Michael said, enhance them. Now, authenticity doesn't mean, oh, I came in, I had a really rough morning, the kids were crazy, and I'm authentically being me.
Or I forgot my underwear this morning, so I'm sorry, if my pants are too tight. And
that's not what we mean by authenticity. You take certain aspects of your personality and exploit them. You up-level them. Yeah. You make them a little bit more energized, a little bit more captivating. It's still you, but you don't have to puke all of you all over the audience. You take certain select elements.
Yeah, so think about some of the performers that you know. Jim Carrey, he initially started with this hyper-exaggerated comedic style.
Comedy.
Very broad as you can be, and he was a genius. He still is a genius. I mean, very few people could do what he was doing comedically. And not everybody could do it. Not even that they wouldn't, but they couldn't. So here's what he did. He amplified that part of his personality, mm-hmm. and of course developed craft and skill over time to get better and better at it. But I don't think he walks around his house like that.
No, but what he can fill it. He can make that work because it comes from an authentic place, but amplified.
Sometimes you'll see a speaker who is a very big personality and they do a great job on stage. And then when they are at dinner with other folks, they're exactly the same, and it's completely overwhelming, and it's not appropriate for that situation. So what happens is sometimes if you go in the wrong direction, you become inauthentic because you have this one personality style, this identity that you always live in, whereas different situations require we play different roles. And so one of the things that you will learn, surprisingly, is not just how to perform on stage, but how to play the right role in every situation. There are some situations where, sitting back, listening very calmly and quietly is really the most effective. And there are other situations where a huge amount of energy and excitement and animation is really, really effective. But do you know which one is effective in which situation? And do you know how to play those all comfortably and still be authentic?
Authentic, right? Because different people call you by different names. My kids call me mom. Somebody else calls me baby. We go by different names. They are all different aspects of who we are. That doesn't make any of them inauthentic. They're just different roles that go by different names in different situations. You have that in you too.
Yeah.
So we're looking for you to gain clarity on which roles to play in which situations. Now that will be different if you're in a 5,000 seat house, or if you're delivering via webinar, or if you're in a room of 20 people doing a round table.
So we help you understand the right role and the right style for each of these situations so that you can develop skill and master each of these roles for each of these situations. And as Amy said, being on video, that's one style. And that's different often than being on a streaming video. If you're recording video in a studio, it's different than recording video on a set, which is different than recording video when you're sitting at your desk doing streaming video, which is often even different than just having a Skype conversation with someone on your computer. Then there's performing, presenting at a conference table in a boardroom, which is different than speaking at the local chamber of commerce, where there might be 50 people in the room and there's construction outside and people are walking in and out of the room as if it's the most normal thing in the world to do while you're speaking. And then on bigger stages with 100 or 200 people, 300 people, and then bigger stages with 1,000 people, 2,000, 5,000 people. Yeah. They all require different skills and different styles where you play different roles in all of those situations. Now, if you get back to something very basic, because that's higher level stuff, that's more advanced stuff. It gets back to some basic things. What do you do? We talked about, if you blank, what do you do? One more thing about that, and then we'll talk about what do you do if you get lost on stage. So if you blank, we talk about not looking at the floor to find your ideas, although once in a while is not the worst thing in the world. It's just if you develop a habit of doing it and there's a pattern of disconnect, then it becomes problematic in a speech. So if you keep looking down to come up with your ideas and then back up, you see even just a few times that I did that, it's problematic. But you tell yourself that you're going to remember what comes next. It works. So you forget, instead of freaking out, you have enough experience because you've rehearsed and you're prepared and you've learned some technique that you can go, okay, I'm going to remember what comes next. Yes, bang, and then there it comes. You also pick up what comes next if you're connected to the audience, because you will remember, oh, I just said XYZ to the woman over here in the petticoat, and that reminds me, now I'm going to talk about ABC, petticoat. Where did that come from?
It's one of the beautiful things too that happens when you are trained, is that you learn as a performer, you always have something to say, and you may be surprised at what comes out of your mouth. But that quality of improv is so useful, because we are live. We are live here and now, and you will be live whether it's on a stage or through video. Yeah. And so having that kind of attitude of saying yes to whatever comes and trusting that you can work with whatever comes is often reassuring. Then you won't blank out.
We do a lot of improv with our students when we do online programs, and also when we do in-person programs. We have a high-level program called the graduate program, and we just spent a week with our students. And one of the things we had them do, which was very difficult, was we had them present to a hostile audience. So their friends, who they've been working with in this grad program for a long time now, they're very close, really, really dear friends. The camaraderie is extraordinary. But we asked them to be rude, to talk on the phone, to walk out of the room, to argue, to criticize.
Hecklers.
And then we had the speakers present in that environment, and they had their improv to rely on. It was very difficult. They also said it was hard for us. It's like parents when you like watch your kid like playing football or something when they're little and it hurts.
Love.
It's really, really hard for us, but we knew it was important, so we did it. And we'd send them out of the room first. Then we'd tell the audience, oh, here's what we want you to do with this particular speaker because they need to work on, X. And then they would do it. And it was hard, but they said it's one of the best things they ever did because it'll never be that bad.
It could never possibly be that bad. And they actually asked for more of it.
Which was really surprising.
It was, because it's extraordinarily painful to have an audience that is that hostile, that aggressive.
Yeah.
Even if the aggression takes the form of falling asleep.
Yeah.
As we asked some of them to do.
Or absolutely no response whatsoever.
No laughs.
None.
At the laugh lines, completely deadpan.
Yeah. We asked somebody who tends to get a lot of laughs.
Yeah.
We had them come in. We asked the audience not to laugh at anything. No reaction, no support whatsoever. And it was really hard for him because he didn't know how to move on after his jokes when the jokes didn't work. And it was tricky. So we say this because this is where improv comes in. Your ability to improv, your ability to work with the room, what to do when somebody's phone goes off, how to answer it.
How to be real and relate to what you're seeing in the room, because they are just other people.
Yeah.
And we encourage, as much as we are encouraging performance, we're also encouraging you to have a conversation with people and to be natural often, to be conversational, to have that in your toolbox to pull out. And that requires seeing what's happening in the audience, seeing if people are walking out, seeing if somebody's having a coughing fit or, God forbid, a heart attack in the room, and responding to those real life situations as they occur the way a real person does.
See, it's very difficult when you're on video like this because we can't see any responses. So what we do—
Facebook. I saw that. Close your Facebook. Thank you very much.
Well done. So what we have to do is we have to imagine your responses. That's where the performing comes in. We have to imagine, here's what they're thinking, here's how they're responding. And so then we can move on from there. Now, what do you do when you're on stage and you feel lost? You're just kind of wandering around. This is a result, A, of not rehearsing, and B, not understanding the concept of blocking.
And not understanding the power of the stage. See, because we both come from theatrical backgrounds, we have great reverence for the stage. It's an incredibly powerful place to be.
And it can swallow you up.
It can. You can get completely lost on it. This notion, this idea of blocking comes from the theater. And it comes from the day where they would set up a little miniature set and the directors would have little blocks that were the performers and move them around. On this line, I'm going to cross to this part of the stage. In this pause, I will cross to center stage. So it's intentional movement. And it can be as simple as what section of the stage you're moving to. And there's a whole language that identifies the different parts of the stage. It can also be, at this point, I'm going to stand up on this chair. And at this point, I'm going to sit down on the lip of the stage and have a very conversational interaction with the first couple of rows.
And why you would choose to do those things.
That's right.
Because if you sit down on the edge of the stage to have a conversation with the audience, to experience them in that way, but it doesn't fit with the material, then it's incongruent. Same thing if you stand up in a chair for a moment and that moment doesn't call for standing up in a chair, it's incongruent and the audience doesn't understand what's happening. But the blocking is for you and for them, because if you block, if you say, I know on this transition, I'm moving to that part of the stage because I want to connect with the audience over there, or because I want to demonstrate some forward movement in the story, it helps you remember what you are going to say and how you're going to say it, because you're now connecting a physical movement and a location on stage to what you're saying. And it also helps the audience consume what you're saying because they can see, feel, and absorb the transitions from one idea to another, from one story to another, from one point to another. And what you do with your body tells them a story.
yes, they get a visual as well. They will feel the energy that you're bringing to it. It becomes a very different story if we teach like this. Oh my goodness.
It's different movement. Like what are we saying? I mean, maybe this is cool. Maybe we do this. We're like, yo, what's up?
Yo.
We're just so mellow. We love it.
We're going to talk about performance.
And so this is what we do. Now, also, interestingly enough, you see we're both sitting in the same angle. And because of the angles of the chairs, it actually creates a particular image, a particular picture. If a director was working with us and we were trying to tell the story to the audience about our relationship, and he put us in this position, it would tell you a story. It might say that there's a certain amount of disconnect. And it also looks pretty. But if we were, in a conversation where we're like this, it tells a very much different story.
I like that story better.
Yeah, this is a better story.
It's a better story.
Now, of course, if I came over here like this, it's
a different story altogether.
Right?
But you create the same kind of images on stage. It doesn't require two people on the stage to do that. Now, having worked with a number of incredibly brilliant directors, and I feel so honored, we've gotten to see some of what goes on in the director's mind. So, for example, we in the Western culture read from left to right. So an audience expects to see things happening from that angle. Very often a director would have someone move in from the opposite side of the stage to establish that person as, say, a villain, or bringing surprise into the circumstance. So there are certain parts of the stage and certain directions you can move in that will accentuate what your content is. And this is a whole science that we're trained in and that we use when we help our students stage their pieces.
So the hands thing. The promise to talk about the hands.
What do I do with my hands?
Which is such an interesting question to me, because when you were an actor, did you ever think of what do I do with my hands?
I did not intentionally do big gestures.
Here's what I want for you. You're going to love it. It's for all of us. I saw a video of somebody teaching that. It was really, really funny.
I love when you do that. Can you imagine? No, we use our hands to communicate something, just the same way you do in everyday language. If you are everyday life, if you're connected to what you're saying, if you're connected to what you're saying and what you're trying to communicate, you'll use your hands. Your body is part of what you have to communicate with, and you will naturally do what is needed to communicate what you're saying.
None of our students have any trouble with their hands. No. None of them ever say, I don't know what to do with my hands, ever. But it seems to me that many of the conversations around public speaking are, what do I do with my hands? And the teacher says, well, this is what you should do with your hands. You just hold your hands by your side like this, or you put one hand in your pocket, the other on your hip, whatever. There's some like, this is supposed to mean this, and this is supposed to mean this, and you do this, and when you say, but that's not real. You will never worry about what to do with your hands when you are connected to what you are saying and the objective you are trying to achieve, because the performer's job is to know what their objective is. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to achieve this right now. And then find the motivation to go after that objective and do everything in their power to reach that objective. Now, if you're more absorbed, if you're self-absorbed and you're absorbed with yourself and how you feel and am I doing a good job and do I look good and how are my hips looking, whatever it is. If this is what you're thinking about when you're on stage in front of the camera, then it's about you. It's not about the audience. It needs to be about the audience. It needs to be about what you're trying to help them achieve or feel. Mm-hmm. Or learn. It's got to be about the promise that your entire presentation is designed to deliver. And when you are that connected with them, you don't think about what do I do with my hands. When you're making love, I don't think you think about what to do with your hands. The hands go where they want to go. You see? So when you're connected, you don't think about what to do with your hands. Could you imagine if we had rehearsed and planned out all of these hand gestures? There are probably 1 million hand gestures in this particular conversation. So, oh yes, when I say conversation, I'm going to do this. It just doesn't make any sense. What happens is you get nervous.
Yeah.
You get disconnected from the audience. You're not sure exactly what you're going to say. You're thinking about getting approval as opposed to results. And then you start thinking about your hands because all of a sudden they start feeling detached from your body.
You feel self-conscious. And so then all of a sudden the hands will maybe migrate here, the covering of the family jewels, because you feel unsafe. You feel naked on the stage. Sometimes people will find that their hands are behind their back, like they feel stuck or trapped. And we're just saying, be real.
Yeah.
Be real. The best possible version of you that is real.
So let's talk about some of the biggest mistakes that performers make.
Yeah.
And what to do instead. And then we're going to take questions. And you see there's a little questions box. You can put questions in there. And Amy's got a computer over here.
Yes, I
and
do.
she's going to pull up the questions, and then we'll take the questions that that come in. We'll spend a little time doing that. Now,
wonderful.
Mistakes. Sometimes people will come on stage and they will start by saying, I'm really happy to be here, which is fine. It's great to be happy to be there. But what's the alternative to being happy to be there? That means you're really pissed that you're there. So I don't really think that you need to tell them that you're happy to be. I think you show them that you're happy to be there. Saying you're happy to be there is just filler. It's just opening filler that's not necessary. And one of the reasons it's problematic is because the 5 speakers that came before you all came out and said, I'm really happy to be here. Now, if let's say I went and gave a speech at my undergrad alma mater, which was Tulane, I might say I'm really happy to be here because I almost didn't graduate. So the fact that I'm back here giving a speech and getting an honorary doctorate, hint, hint, is I'm trying to figure, see, Amy got into both Yale and NYU for grad school, and I only got an NYU for grad school. She chose Yale over NYU. The whole story might have been different if she had chosen NYU, but the point is I'm trying to get an honorary doctorate. So if anybody knows anyone who can hook me up with that, because then I'll have a PhD and she will only have gone to Yale. And
Dr. Port.
She has to call me Dr. Port, which is actually what my father is called because he is, in fact, Dr. Port. The point is, this idea of filling with the beginning, it says, you know, everybody happy to be here. You don't need it. Just like if you say, all right, everybody, let's get started. Well, you already started. It started
as soon as they saw you.
Yes. And if somebody introduced you with a bio, as soon as the bio first word is read, that's when it started. So it started long before you started doing the filler about, you know, the story about coming in on the airplane and your arms are tired and the whole thing. You know, I just flew in, my arms are tired. You know, these jokes that people think they're supposed to use at the beginning of a presentation. By the way, you don't need to open with a joke. You don't. And unless you're a comedian, I wouldn't recommend it. I tend to tell good jokes when
He's the funny one.
When I've worked on them, at least. No, you are very funny.
I'm getting funny.
I'm the funny looking one, that's for sure. In this combination here, I'm definitely the funny looking one. But you don't need to open with a joke. Here's another thing that is a mistake that people often make. They will say, let me tell you a story.
Yeah.
Or they say, can I tell you a story? So I wouldn't ask the audience permission because somebody might go, no, I'd rather not a story right now. Could you talk about this instead? And then you've just lost the room. Great stories are often stories that we don't realize we're in as an audience member. All of a sudden, we're deep in this story and it's interesting and we're following along. But when a speaker says, let me tell you a story, and then they go into speaker voice. There was a time when I was younger, I wasn't as handsome as I am now. You know, this speakers think a lot of themselves. So you go into speaker voice and they're like, oh no, another story from a speaker. Or, you know, they say you need to begin a speech with a story. You don't need to begin a speech with a story.
You also don't need to begin a speech with a question. Now, any of these things can work. A joke can work, a story can work, a question can work. But if you walk into a room and they don't know you yet, they don't like you yet, they may not trust you yet. And so to say, okay, I'd like to start with a question. Please raise your hand if you have any kind of addiction. Right? It's ridiculous. Who's going to want to answer a question?
Now, unless
like
it's
that?
a meeting that's about addiction, that's
Sure.
something else entirely. Or say, how many people here are in debt? You don't think people are going to raise their hand? You know, it's too much. So all audience interaction should be proportionate to the amount of trust that you've earned. So if we're talking to our students that we've been with for years or even a month, we can ask them personal questions and they will talk about it because they trust us and they trust the people in the room, or they trust the people that are in the learning program with them.
That's right.
But those kind of questions can make people uncomfortable. And then you might not get a response. And then you create this distance between you guys. So, this idea of, okay, everybody raise your hand if. People may not want to interact with you right away. So you build into the interaction. There's a trailer of one of my keynotes on YouTube called The Think Big Revolution. It's a 15-minute trailer. And if you watch that, you'll get a sense of my style of performance. Again, I wouldn't ask you to do a lot of the things that I do. I have conversations with voices coming out of speakers. It's not average. It's definitely not your vanilla sugar cookie, which I like vanilla sugar cookies, by the way.
He's not a vanilla sugar cookie.
No, but the point is this. The audience interaction builds throughout. It builds and builds and builds, and I'm asking more and more and more of the audience so that by the end, they're actually doing a choreographed dance with professional dancers on stage. And
everybody does it.
I've done this for estate planning attorneys. And I was going in there and we were saying, I don't know, is this going to happen? Is it going to work? But the performer's willing to take the risk. I'm willing to try. I'm willing to ask them to do things they haven't done before, but I've got to earn it. I've got to get them there. And that's what's important. If you're doing audience interaction and somebody asks a question and you say, that's a great question. But if somebody asks a question, the next question, and you don't say that's a great question, you may be suggesting that person's question is not a great question. So another mistake that performers often make is saying that's a great question.
And it's so easy to say that. We know that. It's so easy to say that, but it's filler for let me think for a moment about your question because I don't have a set answer for that. That's so often why we use that.
You also don't have to use the old axiom, tell them what you're going to tell them, tell them, and then tell them what you told them. You don't have to do that. It's fine to tell them what you're going to tell them. And maybe more appropriate for curriculum-based speeches. There's two different types of speeches. There are curriculum-based and there are story-based speeches. So one of the things we cover at the beginning of our training program, and then you choose which type of presentation you're giving. But if I was watching a movie and the director came on at the beginning of the movie and said, I'm really excited for you to watch this movie. The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to see the main character steal something. And then you're going to see them get arrested. Then you're going to see them have a really difficult time in jail. Then you're going to be wondering, did they do it or did they not do it? Well, let me just tell you now, they did it. So you don't have to figure it out. If you told you the whole plot, you wouldn't want to watch. So sometimes, tipping your hat too soon actually makes the presentation less interesting. And instead, you could reveal it throughout the presentation. You can drop one nugget after another. People say dropping bombs, right? I saw Omar, one of our friends, was at a speech, and I saw on his Facebook page, he says, so-and-so is dropping bombs left and right. And if you tell them what bombs you're going to drop, maybe those bombs are not quite as explosive.
Now, this also brings up the idea of contrast. There are different kinds of contrast. We were talking earlier about message versus curriculum. A lot of presentations have both in there for contrast. You'll also see delivery contrast. Sometimes there are emotional and moving moments, and other times it can be quite funny and light, and that's the emotional contrast. Another example of delivery contrast is, well, sometimes you may be really animated and you may be talking in a way that has a lot of energy and power behind it. And in other moments, you may get really, really small, but very distilled in your message as you speak to people.
So you may use video to introduce an idea, and then you break people up into groups. This is delivery contrast, the way that all the ideas are delivered. So the mistake that people make is to be the same, is to stay the same, is to keep doing the same thing. Because if you keep doing the same thing over and over and over, it gets a little annoying. My job at home is to be the annoying one. And it works quite well, especially for the kids. Like, come on, go away, Dad. That's the role. And I could say the word same 5 different times, and every time I could say it differently. And this is actually a rhetorical device. One of the things that great speakers do is they will repeat something over and over. They will say the same thing, the same way, at different times. So same, you see? So anyhow.
And another thing he just did there was he said same, the same thing, the same way, at different times. So there is contrast just even in how you structure your sentences sometimes, to do the same, different, and a different tone of voice that pops it. So that comes back to the stagecraft. That comes back to
teach a technique that it's unlikely you've ever learned, let alone heard of, unless you were a highly trained actor. And it's called content mapping. It's one of the things we do with you, so that you actually map out your sentences, your pauses, your transitions, all of the language, so you know what your operative words are, which means the most important word in a sentence. So you know what you're going to hit, what you're driving toward, what your pacing is like. Now, you don't have to stay. You're not constrained by this kind of work. It doesn't make you more rigid. It actually makes you looser, because you're so comfortable with it that you can throw it out before you walk on stage.
It's so much fun. I'm a total content mapping geek.
She is.
I love to sit down and go, oh, here are the contrasting words. And so this one at this pitch and this one at that one. And then you just play. But it's so much fun.
Yale, they're a little geekier at Yale. At NYU, we were,
they're the cool ones.
More improv.
All geek all the time over here.
That's right.
I love it.
That's right. So you know who the smart one in the family is. So this way, here's the thing. This is what you do. You'll know your material so well because people ask. Here's another thing that I think may be something that you worry about. People ask, well, what if I rehearse a lot? What if I over rehearse so that I'm stiff? It'll never happen. It'll never happen unless you anticipate. You see, if you're under rehearsed, then you're winging it. And those of you who think you're clever and are natural communicators, you wing it. So you know how much better you could be if you rehearsed. And sometimes it works okay, and sometimes it doesn't. But you kind of feel average. And you know you could be better. People who don't think of themselves as natural communicators often rehearse more and sometimes even do a better job than the natural communicators because they've done the work.
The natural communicators often go, oh, I'm good at this. I'm naturally good at public speaking. So you get lazy.
It's true.
We see it all the time. But because you have that natural ability, if you learn how to rehearse, you will just get better and better. It will not become staid or stuck. It just becomes more of an art form and that much more effective.
And what you do as soon as you walk on stage or in front of the room, if you're well prepared, is you stay in the moment. Because if you're overly obsessed with what you did and making everything the exact same way you did it last time or did it in rehearsal, then you start to constrain yourself. You start to think about, oh, I just messed up that moment. Oh, it's not how I wanted to do it. And then of course you're not in the moment, you're in the past. And so this moment gets screwed up. Or then you're thinking, oh, I want to nail the next thing coming up the way I did it in rehearsal. And then of course you're not in the moment, you're up in the next thing. So what you want to do is you want to actually blank your mind out. But you can only do this if you're really well prepared. You actually let everything go and you only focus on the moment at hand. And then you can be natural. Then you can improv. Then you can even ad lib. But you know your material so well that you're so connected with your audience because you're in the moment. And it is one of the most important techniques in all performance. Music, dance, theater.
Even athletics, we hear about the zone, getting in the zone. And that takes rehearsal. That takes craft.
So if you're a football fan, I'm sure you've seen a receiver, just do a quick post They run out, they post this way, and it's a 15-yard pass right to the numbers. There should be no problem here. These are the best athletes in the world, and it bounces off their chest. And the whole audience goes, what? No! And then the front page of the sports section the next day is a picture of that happening, and that player gets ridiculed for a week. Why? He wasn't in the moment. He anticipated, so he was trying to catch the ball before it came, and as a result, he couldn't catch it. Or he was late because he was thinking about something else. He was thinking, I'm about to get hit, which I understand. I think I'd be thinking about that too. But of course, these are professionals. So he's got to put that out of his mind, that these people are going to come and crush me and try to kill me. I've just got to stay in the moment and catch the ball. But that may be how you feel when you are on stage, that this audience is going to kill you, that they're going to throw things at you, they're going to hate you, something bad's going to happen. And they're not. If you make a couple mistakes in a presentation, and we make mistakes all the time.
Yeah.
I make more mistakes than Amy, but you're not going to go to jail. Nobody's going to send you to jail if you make a few mistakes here. And the audience is not going to hold it against you. I've fallen off the stage. I fell into the orchestra pit once. It's a great moment, actually, because I fell off. You heard a boom, which was me hitting the ground. And then I did like what the kids do, where they go, I'm okay. And the whole audience laughed. I had to go all the way around, get back on stage and work. I've kicked over lights on stage, turned it into a great moment. But because you're so connected, because you're so excited, and actually the light I kicked over was because recently I did this, was because I was so in the moment, but I wasn't aware of my surroundings. So you have to find the balance. And it worked out okay. Nobody got hurt. Nothing broke. But awareness on stage is another important skill to develop. One of the reasons that people look down so much on stage when they're going to move, so you'll be talking, and then you decide you're going to move over here, so you go look down, and then you walk to that spot. I often say, like let's say you're in a hotel room, I often ask, do you think you're going to fall off the side of the floor or something? If you're on a stage, do you think you're going to fall off the stage? What's going on? Why are you always looking there? And it's because they don't yet have the situational awareness, the feeling of the lights, to make sure you're in your light so you're not dark.
And sometimes they don't know to ask for tech rehearsal. As a performer, ideally, you want to be able to get in the space before you show up to perform.
That's right.
And so one of the other things we teach is what to look for in your contract, what to make sure as a performer you have, so that you can do the best possible job that you can, and it can be that much more of an incredible experience for the audience.
Excellent. Now, Amy's going to go to the questions. Remember I said I was going to tell you the link for the book, the Heroic Public Speaking Total Immersion Program, one more time. Actually, I'll say it twice now, and I'll say it right when we get off. It's heroicpublicspeaking.com/special. heroicpublicspeaking.com/special. I guess that was actually 2 times, not 1 time, but it was reinforcing the first, and I'm going to count them as 1. The card is open today. You have no need to wait until our next session, our live stream. Our next session is going to be all about the program. We lay out all the details, but of course the details are also on the website. So if you're going to do it, you should go do it now. There's no reason to wait. Somebody, every once in a while, somebody will say something like, well, I'll do it later. I'll go get the training later. And I always ask, when? Well, later. When later? Do you have a specific plan? Like, I'm going to do it September through January? Okay, well, that's good. You're going to start September. You've got it all planned out, mapped out, schedule cleared. Great. But if it's just, I'll do it later, or I'm not ready for the training, how do you do the training ever? How do you get ready for a training? How do you get ready to train other than to actually train? So we believe that life is not a spectator sport. We like to be in the game, and in our case, on the stage. And I think you want the same thing. So if you want on the stage, if you want in the game, then now is the time to train. So let's go to questions.
Robert says,
and we'll do 30 minutes of questions.
Robert says, busted. I was just on Facebook trying to multitask.
That's funny.
Yeah, we see that sometimes. Michael asks, can you have more than one framework in the same talk?
Absolutely. Sure. I don't know if I keep changing up the frameworks, but you can use, again, you can combine frameworks. You just don't want to be all over the place. Too many different protocols may be hard for people to consume because they're getting used to one particular style of introducing the information. And then if you jump to another style, they've got to process that, focus on that. Jump to another one, they got to process and focus on that.
TJ asks about swearing or cursing, accidentally or on purpose, he says.
There are some people that have made their name cursing in speeches. Really. Like there's a couple people that I know who are known for cursing. And this is weird to me because I'm thinking of one person right now. I have no idea what he actually talks about. I mean, he's really popular, really successful, but I'm actually trying to think. I know he talks about social media, but I know him as the guy who curses nonstop. That's his brand. If that's the brand you want, then you should do that. You're not going to get invited to some places. There are some places that I spoke at a financial advisory company once, and many of the folks were Mennonite. First thing I did is my research on that people. I said, cursing is not cool here, not even one. I'm going to go give a speech in a few weeks in New York for a religious community, a Jewish community. Cursing is not appropriate. I may curse once or twice in a speech, and often the curse comes out because I'm so fired up about something. And in fact, the audience loves it because it's so human, it's so natural, it's so real. But if you're just throwing around curses unnecessarily and you don't have a really good reason for it, I don't know why you would need to do it. I think there are other words that you could use to express yourself, but a curse here and there, usually pretty fine, unless it's an environment where it's just strictly unacceptable. We had somebody give a speech at one of my events once who actually taught on camera training, and she cursed nonstop through the whole thing, and the audience complained.
Yes.
Really complained a lot.
It does also depend on the context and the relationships. So I don't typically curse a lot, but with a group of students who I'd been working with over a longer period of time who knew that I didn't typically curse a lot.
It's really funny.
If I all of a sudden launched one, it got a certain response that in this case was positive because it was so unexpected. Yeah,
like if you're a nun and you're giving a speech and you throw out a little curse word at one point, you may get a great response because it's so unexpected. So.
Adenike says, is it absolutely necessary to practice a speech before giving it? I thought not practicing will aid in presenting from your core, from the heart.
Yeah, this is one of the myths, I think.
Misconception.
We also call it rehearsing rather than practicing, because you practice sport, you rehearse for a show. And the difference is you practice a technique. So you practice your voice work. You practice your movement work on stage. You practice your content mapping, but you rehearse because the difference is this. Practice just gets you ready to perform. The difference in performing is that you're choosing what to perform in advance, which is different than a sport. If I'm a football player, I've got to work on my technique. I've got to be ready for whatever happens in the game. But I don't know how the game is going to go. We're picking our plays, but I don't know what the other team is going to do, so I just have to respond. When you're performing, you know what you're performing. You've decided how you're going to perform. You know what stories you're telling. You know what content you're teaching. If you go in there with this idea that you are so much more authentic because you're not prepared at all, I think, you could have a problem. This is one of those things that people will try to debate, I think, because there are people that are very quick on their feet, that they're funny, they engage with people really well, and they do a good job. But they know their content so well that they are actually rehearsed. So that's the thing. One more thing, sweetie. One more thing. That's the thing, is that they don't think they've rehearsed. But I've been teaching Book Yourself Solid material for a decade. So I can do that anywhere, anytime, upside down or right side up, because I know it like the back of my hand. I'm rehearsed. But if it's new material that you're just going to go out there and figure out, or some ideas you have, or things you think about, you're just going to have a monologue that's all over the place, streaming. I don't know. I just don't see it. I don't see it.
That's kind of like Freudian therapy, where you just go in and you just speak whatever comes to mind, right? It's a very different kind of thing. Now, there is a difference between an outlined speech, like Michael's talking about, knowing the outline of Book Yourself Solid, that system so well, and a scripted speech. There is a difference, but yes, you rehearse both of them. It does such, well, just one moment, sweetie.
Yes.
It really honors your audience when you rehearse, because it's saying to them, you are worth my time. The audience and the material are both worth your time, and that you care enough about communicating to the audience that you will learn the craft of rehearsing, because it is a craft in and of itself, in order to be able to deliver the way you want to deliver it. And again, you may be able to speak on topics that you're passionate about, but if you're really, truly 100% behind the topic that you're speaking on, we encourage you, rehearse it inside and out. Learn how to rehearse if you don't know how. And that's a key point.
That's one of the things we teach, is how to rehearse. We have a very specific process. There's actually 7 parts, 7 steps in the rehearsal process that you go through every time you rehearse. I was going to say something else, but I was so mesmerized by what you were saying. I don't even need to go on.
It'll come back to you.
It'll come back to me.
Delivering an hour educational presentation, is it less powerful and effective to occasionally check your notes than being the performer who memorizes the material? That's Suzanne.
So what I remember what I was going to say, and it relates to this question also.
Good.
Scripting a speech is different than outlining a speech, as Amy said. One is not better than the other. They're different. For different performers, different methodologies are better. For different types of speeches, different methodologies are better. So one of the things that we're looking at is, what's your style? How do we exploit your style? What material are you teaching? How do we exploit that material so it fits your style? To be clear, one isn't better than the other. And Book Yourself Solid, a speech I've been giving for almost a decade, is not scripted. But you'll hear me say some of the same things every time I do it, because I've been doing it for so long. Some of the patterns, the language patterns, have become consistent, and that's excellent, as it should be. Think Big Revolution is another keynote that I do, which I designed. When did you do that? We did it 2 years ago, about
2013.
About 2013, and I wrote that as a script to memorize, just like an actor would, and then perform. And so it was rewrite after rewrite after rewrite, memorization, because it's a different kind of speech with different requirements. So if you want to memorize, we will teach you how to memorize so that when you are presenting, performing, nobody knows it's memorized. And it seems like it's coming up to you in the moment. For example, every single word that we have spoken today is memorized. No, that's not true. Just kidding. But just remember, one is not better than the other. Sometimes because we were actors, people have this assumption that you're supposed to write it and memorize it. No, it's not always the case. They're different, and one is not better than the other.
Audiences do love feeling like they're experiencing something that's happening spontaneously. Right? So when you respond to what is happening in the moment, what is happening in the audience, that gives them that. But you can do that by going, oh, wait a minute. I do him sometimes. I have to tell you this story, right? And that may be completely planned and rehearsed. That you go, I have the best story for this part.
And you might say, well, but that's inauthentic. You're saying, oh, I just thought of something. No, it's not inauthentic, because it's a performance for the audience to make their experience better. That's what you're doing. You're putting on a show. Okay, next question.
I need help on breathing. Almost every speech I've given so far, I've felt out of breath. Any tips or exercises I can do? This is from Liz Wright.
In the Total Immersion program, we spend a fair amount of time on breathing techniques, on speech techniques. with videos on what to do to warm up your body, to improve your breathing, to improve your speech. It's essential. And what you may be feeling is a lack of breath because you breathe shallowly. You don't breathe fully. You don't fill all of your lungs with air.
And when you're breathing shallowly, it contributes to anxiety. Because if you imagine that you're just taking these little catch breaths, you might also imagine that you could put yourself into a full-out panic attack. You can create that emotional state, but the emotional state will also constrict your breath in that way. So you need the training. You need the training because then that craft serves you well when you are performing.
Or you may be breathing fully, but not speaking on your breath. So for example,
you'll see this it happens more with women than with men, where they just let a lot of air out as they're talking, as we are talking, and it becomes this much breathier sound, which may not contribute to you coming across as substantial.
Or you breathe, and then you start speaking after you exhale, but you have no breath left. So you're like, I'm breathing deeply, but you don't have breath left, so you're confused. And then you talk some more. The sound is on the breath. It comes out with your voice. They are connected. They are the same. And the more powerful your voice, the more powerful you are perceived to be.
I'm a total voice geek too. I love vocal and speech training. Okay.
She does.
Okay. You just mentioned a speaker voice. Are you saying the voice I use when making presentations has to be different from my normal voice?
No.
We're not.
It should be the same.
Opposite.
The same voice. The speaker voice is, I'm going to tell you a story now. There was a time long, long ago when there were people who were small. That's the storyteller voice that we often refer to. And you don't want to do that. You want to sound the way you sound anywhere. The difference is sometimes you are using more volume because you need to fill a space. And sometimes you are overemphasizing certain sounds. You are more articulate with your speech because if people don't understand what you're saying, even if your voice is big, then they can't understand what you're saying. Sometimes men with really big voices actually are hard to understand if they are not articulate. They really have to work on their speech. So if I'm saying the word love, then I'm in a big space. And
say it again.
Well, I'll say it the good way in a minute. But if I say it if I don't emphasize the last sound of it, and I say love, you don't actually know what I said. But if I said love, then you know what I said. Now, if there's 1,000 people in the room, even if there's a mic, I want to say love. The vibration is important. Plus, the sounds of the words influence the way people feel. So the word cut feels different than love. They feel different in your body when you say them. And here's the thing. You want to be an open, emotional performer. And the words will influence the way you feel. So when you're telling a story that is emotional, that is intense, if you are what we call chewing on the words, enjoying the words, living in the feeling of those words, it will feel more significant to you and then, of course, to the audience.
Say it again.
Love.
It's good, right?
It's good. Love.
What if you've been told that your hand gestures are distracting? Should you try to minimize them?
It's not minimizing or maximizing. It's that for some reason you're disconnected from what you're doing with your hands. Now, maybe you just talk so much with your hands and it's so natural for you that, yes, maybe you do need to bring it back a little bit. So on camera, you will bring it back a little bit. Because we have this larger space set up, we can use our hands and our arms more than we can if we were really up close. You know, if we were really close and I'm waving around my hands the whole time talking like this, then they'd be distracting. They'd be in your way. It would be weird. But because we're back here, then we can get away with it. Sometimes I have to watch it because I'll move quickly, and sometimes the camera can't move as quickly. But that's different on stage. On stage, it's no problem. You generally, when you're on camera, your hands are staying around this level. This is just a technical thing. It doesn't change what you're doing with your hand. Your hands will still follow suit. you're just keeping them in a particular plane so they're not in front of your face when you're talking, because that would be distracting to the audience.
Sometimes people get feedback that their gestures are distracting if there's one gesture that they use repeatedly, and if that's the only thing they do with their hands. And often that's because people feel trapped. If you feel trapped and you don't know what to do with your body, then you might just do the same thing again and again and again. So we're back to connect with the material, connect with your audience, and be real.
We have a mic that has a personality. You can see the nice hair.
It's like Beaker from the Muppets. Can you see it?
Actually, this is where my hair went. I had all this hair, but we needed to cover the mic.
Put it on. No, it'll mess with the sound.
Yeah. All right, next question.
Okay. The chemistry between you, even through the computer screen, is infectious and inspiring. Oh, this is nice. We love that. Thank you. Thank you.
We hear that all the time, and we love to hear it more because we love each other. So it's nice to hear.
I don't yet have a solid idea of what general content. It makes me feel uneasy about committing to professional training because I feel like I'm floundering. How can I practice without content, Murray?
Well, two things. One, if you do work with us, you will create your content. That's number one. Number two, the skill that you learn as a performer will apply to any content that you will ever create. So even if you say, you know what, I don't want to create a content right now, I just want to work on the performing, all you need is a page. There's a few paragraphs, because you can work with those on all of the different things that we're teaching, and you will learn the craft. You'll develop the skill. Again, in our next session, we're going to talk more about the program specifically. You don't have to wait to join us, but we will talk about it more specifically, answer questions specifically about the program. This time we wanted to focus more just on the lessons that we're teaching.
Amy and Michael, thank you for this very interesting and valuable session. Welcome. I have experience as a speaker, but one can always learn more from such great professionals as you. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Do you have, this is from Brad, do you have suggestions on how to approach speaking on technical subjects in formal settings, such as speaking at a higher ed research conference?
Yes, absolutely. There are different things that you can do. Can you somehow make what you're teaching visual, so it's illustrative, so they can see it? I saw someone give a speech once where they were trying to demonstrate how much oil it took to make a Big Mac. So they had a little table out there, and he took out a Big Mac and he opened it up so the audience could see the Big Mac. And then he took out a pitcher of oil, like a big pitcher of oil. And he took out a glass. And he said, let me show you how many glasses of oil it takes to make one. And so he filled one glass and he put it down. So you think, oh, it must be one. Nope. He takes out another one, puts it on, fills the next one. And he did this until he had 3.5 glasses. It was amazing. One Big Mac.
And disgusting.
On top of that.
And created impact, a visual impact.
And I remember it as a result. So can you visualize? Are there props that you can use to help demonstrate your points? Is there a way to involve the audience? For example, let's say you're trying to teach them 7 specific things. Can you bring 7 people up onto the stage, have them sit down in 7 chairs, have each one write out, on their paper, like the big word that relates to the idea. And then every time you say that word related to that particular idea, they hold up their card and the audience, interacts with them around it. They say the word, etc. There's different ways you can play with that, but the more involved you get the audience with the concepts that you're teaching, the more they'll remember them.
Jody says, when speaking for a recorded video, what's the most important performance technique or approach or tip or insight to keep in mind when speaking to a camera?
Your eyes. It's all eyes. Now, we're farther away, so you can't see our eyes as much, but imagine. We're going to come up close. I'm going to talk to you here. Let's see. Okay. So here are our eyes.
I totally want to wink.
You do? You can wink. Go ahead. So it's all in the eyes. It's in the eyes, the brightness of the eyes. And often the smiling makes a big difference. You're not like, hi, you're not talking like this, like smiling fake. But there's a brightness to your face. There's an enthusiasm, there's an excitement, which lights you up. Sometimes people get nervous or anxious when they're on camera, so it closes them off and they use their mouth less, and they don't move their jaw very much, and then they kind of get stuck, and then they have to refocus their eyes, and then they figure out what they're going to say. But if you are engaged with them, excited about it, and your eyes are really engaged with the camera, it's comfortable for the audience at home, whereas it might not be comfortable actually in the same room, because if you just stare at somebody like this in the same room, it's weird. But because they know you're not actually in the room with them, they can look away whenever they want, but they like that you're always connected to them. Oh, you know what? They probably didn't hear us very well because the mic's here.
Oh!
But I hope you picked it up.
Did you hear us?
Yeah, I hope you got what we said there. I think you could figure it out.
I'm presenting my first workshop for 4 hours. Any suggestions on how to time your content when interaction is involved so that you don't run out of time?
Yes, here's a good one. This is a Michael Port special. Remember how, what?
Maureen, I was just acknowledging.
Oh, her name's Maureen. This is something that I've been doing for a long time, and I've been getting other people to do as well because it works really well. I didn't make this up. I think some kindergarten teacher made this up somewhere, but I started using this when I was speaking, because if you have the audience do something and you don't know how to get them back after you've asked them to do something, you lose your power because you start shouting at them. I saw a colleague of mine do a great little introductory exercise with a group of people when he was doing a TEDx speech. And TEDx, you've got about 18 minutes or so at most. So he did this exercise, and there was 450 people in the room, and they made a lot of noise. It was good. It worked. But he didn't tell them how they were going to come back or when they were going to go back. So he said, hey, guys, come on back. Guys, come back. I said come back. I only have 18 minutes. He got pissed. So here's what we do. Every time you do an exercise, now you set this up at the beginning. If you're doing a 4-hour workshop, you don't have to say this every time because they'll get it. Now, any of our live events, whether they're Book Yourself Solid related events, Heroic Public Speaking related events, everybody knows that this is how we do it. And even people who have never been there before, they catch on like that because of the other people in the room who know it. So what you say is this: okay, we're going to do this exercise. We're going to do it for 3 minutes. This is how the exercise is going to go. Now, at the end of 3 minutes, here's what's going to happen. You're going to see me on stage with my hand raised. That's the signal for you to raise your hand and immediately stop talking and immediately sit down. So if you see someone else's hand raised, that's the signal for you to raise your hand, immediately stop talking, and immediately sit down.
I'm really curious how many of them are sitting at home right now in front
with
of
their hands up.
They put their hands up.
And what it means is I just stand there like this, and the whole room becomes silent, and everybody sits down, and I didn't have to open my mouth. I've done this with thousands and thousands of people doing exercises where they're not even in their seats. They're way around the room in different places, and they stop talking and they go back. It often works even better the larger the audience because you see so many hands go up. So that's what you do. And then you'll have trained them to do that. It's a kindergarten technique.
It works at home too with children sometimes.
Like me. And she wants, see how I stop talking as soon as she raises her hand? It's brilliant. It works every time. All right, we've just a couple more questions, then we got to wrap up.
Okay. Would the program be good for someone like me that has not even started public speaking?
Of course. We work with people that are absolutely brand new to public speaking, as well as professional speakers. So we have the highest level professional speakers come and do master classes with us. Often they'll organize, their colleagues will organize a group together and say, we want a couple days with you, and we'll rent a theater and we'll work with them. So we work with the people at the highest level and brand new people who don't even want to speak, people who don't want to speak professionally necessarily, but just want to get better at presenting. Maybe they have to present in front of the boardroom or a project manager, and they have 10, 15 people, that they need to present to. You may not be writing speeches, but you still need to learn the skills of performance so that you can steal the show in any of those types of situations.
If you are nervous about public speaking, if you are scared of public speaking, that's a sign that you have more potential than you're currently accessing. And that's one of the aims of the training. And again, we'll talk about it more next time, what it actually entails.
It's such a great feeling to be fully self-expressed.
Yes.
What people...
Well put.
Thank you. What people find is that they find their voice. That's what happens.
And they find what they have to say in the world.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of the things that we hear over and over and over is I feel like I found my voice. I've always had something to say. I'm not sure how to articulate it, but now I do. And that is a beautiful thing. So on that note, we're going to wrap up. We have another streaming webinar with you next week. So please make sure to be there. We do it live. I don't think a recording goes out that. No recording. So be there live. The website for the Heroic Public Speaking Total Immersion Program is heroicpublicspeaking.com/special. heroicpublicspeaking.com/special. It's an honor to be of service to you. We never take it for granted. We love this work and we'd love to do it with you. Amy, thank you. And I, of course, love you.
Thank you. Right back at you.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.